Hey everyone, I'm Frank,
Hey, I'm Leo.
and welcome to a brand new episode of
Terror. Recollect? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the 18th episode, no more seasons, of Terror Recollect. Thank you so much for being a part of this. In this crazy time, one thing that we have found is that humor is so important to have in our everyday lives. And that topic has worked its way into the thing we're going to be talking about today, which is what, Frank?
comedy and horror.
Comedy in horror. Who would have thought there was such a thing? But there is.
There is indeed, and there's a couple different types. There's comedies that have horror elements. There's horror movies that have comedy elements. Does comedy have its place in horror? Does it have a place in horror? Should it stay miles away from the genre?
I think the guys that did Super Troopers, they call themselves Broken Lizard.
Yeah,
They did a Club Dread.
yeah,
Oh my God,
it's horrible.
I hated it. It felt like Super Troopers with a bad horror movie in it.
I totally agree with you that that movie was horrible because I was such a big Super Troopers fan that I was so looking forward to. I was like, horror, my favorite genre, and now these guys are tackling it. I thought it was going to be gold, and it was coal.
Yeah, it was a giant lump of coal. I agree.
And it's just one of those. It's one of those examples of it done incorrectly. Of a bad attempt at the comedy horror.
Yeah.
But there are some. Shaun of the Dead is totally opposite to me. It's done to perfection. It's super funny. It's one of those ones I would highly recommend. And the same thing with Freddy Krueger. That's what they kind of did throughout, three, or well, not three, I wouldn't say, but 4 and 5 especially, and then 6.
6 was the huge, went into that direction. I mean, big time, to the point where it was one of my least favorites for the longest time because I'm like, they're not taking themselves serious.
Yeah.
Especially with the power glove and the video game, situation and a few other things. It was just like, no, like you're blending things that shouldn't blend. It was actually after you and I went to go watch Nightmare on Elm Street 1 at the Chinese Theater in the Screen Fest, Beers and Fears, that I gained a much larger appreciation for the whole series and was like, let me revisit Freddy's Dead and see if I feel any different. And I really was able to see, oh, okay, it's like eating popcorn that's sweet and salty. You either have caramel popcorn, which is, sugary, or you have regular butter and salt popcorn. But when you try to actually mix the two, I think it's like kettle corn or something. Like you actually get both. You get the sweet and the salty. If the balance isn't right, it tastes awful. But if it's just right, you're eating a brand new thing. And I'm not always a fan of the brand new thing.
Me neither. I love. By the way, I love Leo's food analogies, but they're actually very spot on when he does them.
Oh yeah, it's like this. And then there's this, but then there's a little this in the middle here.
And then we can relate to stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So it gives the audience, a little bit.
Get some kettle corn, and you'll go like, oh, this is Freddy's Dead. Like it's a decent balance. I'm eating sweet and salty. The 2 sleepaway camp movies, 2 and 3. 3 very much more because that movie relied so heavily on the jokes. It was joke setup, dark twist. Angela comes in. There's a nasty death, pretty brutal death, and then she whips back and is now saying a funny quip. Oh, whatever. Sleepaway Camp 2, which is actually one of my favorite favorite horror movies of all time, or horror comedies of all time. And I think the thing actually says comedy horror.
Yeah.
So it's funny, I didn't even notice that, but obviously it's intentionally made that way to give us a different appeal. And I think personally, Sleepaway Camp 2 is the best balance of comedy and horror. It plays it perfectly because you end up having fun during the movie.
So going back to what you were talking about the good balance and stuff like that. Like I personally, like I said, there's not very many horror movies with comedy elements that work, but Child's Play is another one. The first Child's Play and the second maybe. Really, the only thing that's comedy is his quips and things like that, and some of the things he says. Everything else is straight up serious, and it's straight up horror.
You would have genuinely freaky moments, and then humor from the doll, humor from things that he would say, but it was like it almost made you uncomfortable and you didn't want to laugh.
Yeah.
And it was just, it added to that horror element. Child's Play 2, it kind of does what all sequels do. Child's Play 2 really amped up the humor a bit more, and then Chucky was saying funnier things, and same thing with Freddy. In the first one, Freddy did certain things like, look, I'm gonna cut off my finger, and stuff like that, or really kind of mean humor.
Yeah.
But when we got into the second one, it was a little funnier.
Yeah.
Third one, even more funny. Fourth one, definitely way funnier. Fifth one, definitely humor. Because, I mean, there's like comic book cutouts. There's a lot of joking. And then six is, or Freddy's Dead, is like half humor to the point where they have like Roseanne Barr, Tom Arnold come in, and which is what it was, a very nice return to basics with Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Same thing with Child's Play. Child's Play 2, still kind of there. 3, I don't remember 3 too well, to tell you the truth. Bride definitely started cranking up that angle and had much more humor. Seed of Chucky definitely was like, they went too far.
Yeah.
So then with Curse, they recoiled and made it sporadic humor again and not all humor. But then they had some success with that. And they're like, okay, let's just make Cult of Chucky, which is tons of humor and tons of little funny parts. But that one had like dark and humor.
Yeah.
It was like eating Neapolitan ice cream. You're definitely having one scoop of vanilla and one scoop of chocolate and one scoop of strawberry.
That's where you kind of can tell when the franchise kind of veered off top or kind of went off the tracks a little bit, when they have to go back to basics. Like, you have that little bit in the middle that's kind of like, oh, that went off the tracks, but then like New Nightmare brought it back to basics. Curse of Chucky brought it back to basics.
So even in movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is one of the most brutal entries, there are funny moments, but by the characters being the characters. Franklin being annoying, not this Franklin, or where are you? Not that Franklin, but the Franklin in the movie being annoying, where he's just like, Sally, we can't do this, Sally. Oh my God, Sally.
That's your best impression yet.
Right? Yeah. That would be a lot. Sally took the keys. We got no keys, Sally. I'm gonna hit you. Go hit you, Sally. Anyway, I can go on. But anyway, I think I just scared my dog.
It's kind of like going back to what you were saying about having to have that curvature.
I noticed Frank's got some cool lights, so
I
got some cool lights.
You got like a holy grail back there.
I know, it's like
but like Frighteners.
Oh, Frank Fast with the look at it.
Frighteners.
He's like, off the top of my head, Frighteners.
Off the Frighteners.
I love it. Oh, dude, Frighteners is a perfect. Oh God, I just got chills. I think that is the best modern horror comedy out there.
Yeah, it's very when it's dark. When it's dark, it's very dark. It's very morbid. Like it's kind of creepy in some parts with the death.
Oh, very creepy.
With the Reaper coming out of the.
Yeah.
But when it's funny, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
You got the three ghosts that are kind of
so well. I mean, it's the perfect. You got me tripping. I'm just like, oh my God, yes. It's
the chocolate brownie blizzard from Dairy Queen. It's got two of my favorite things, and it's perfectly blended together.
Yes.
So
Man, it's a great example of how food and horror or food and film uh, they work because it's something that we interact with our minds, our emotions. Food isn't just, I'm gonna eat a can of tuna every day just to make sure I don't die of hunger. It's like, no, I want to have some of this. I want to try some of this. It's about flavor. It's about enjoying. That kind
here's
of
one
makes
that
me think of Idle Hands.
that's another one. Yeah,
Idle
yeah, yeah.
Hands was good.
Great.
On all Idle Hands was kind of that dairy blizzard, brownie blizzard.
Yeah, yeah, it
Maybe
was.
not as, I mean, as of this conversation, I'm putting Frighteners at the peak.
Yeah,
I don't think it gets better than Frighteners, but I think right under that is Idle Hands because that's very definitely a comedy,
yeah.
especially
But it,
when the characters are dead and they got like things sticking
yeah.
out of their necks and
I mean, yeah, that's a perfect example. I would say that that movie has a little bit more comedy than horror, like
yes,
you said,
yeah,
but it's still blended together. It's still a great movie. It's still very entertaining,
yeah.
and the comedy is comedy. It's hilarious.
I mean, the list literally goes on and on, but I'm thinking of like a couple of my favorites. Waxwork absolutely has humor in it, but sporadically because the subject matter is a bunch of wax figures that come to life. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the worst movies I've ever seen is actually Waxwork 2, the sequel, because it did the same thing that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 did. It took the humor and just,
Yeah,
and to me, it made it awful because the predecessor was not that level of funny. If the first movie had been that funny, granted, go for it. But when you take an established film and just turn it into a joke, like
yeah.
Wax 2 or Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, it just doesn't work in my opinion. My favorite entries in the Ghoulies are 3 and 4. And it's honestly because the humor element is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it so well to the point where they have little personalities and they're not just like mindless killing machines. They're really, really entertaining to watch. I don't really like the word entertaining, but they're very engaging to watch. They're very like it's done really well. And I think that's I'm tripping out because there's a lot of really interesting examples of how humor in horror movies.
It kind of saves the day in a way, like kind of like
Yeah,
they change into comedy but it's a change for the better type thing.
right,
But well, this one, well, the Ghoulies one it was supposed to be maybe a little silly, but horror. It was supposed to be a horror movie.
right.
But then they said, "Oh no, it's a comedy." So they upped it, but it was a good change to you. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's what you liked about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It was its saving grace. Chud and Chud 2. The first Chud movie is kind of
Wow.
weird. It is
Yeah.
literally like it's very creepy. The monsters are really gross looking and it's kind of got this really weird tone and message to it all. And then you got Chud 2. Hold on, let me grab some.
Which is the one I prefer.
Yeah, and it's a straight up comedy.
Straight up comedy.
And it doesn't look like a comedy.
No, it looks like yeah, that's very misleading. That cover is very misleading of Chud 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's definitely played entirely for laughs. And I ended up enjoying it, but it was not at all what I was expecting. But it's
Nothing. They don't even look the same. Like the creatures don't even look the same. Like they're not monsters. They're zombies. You know, like
yeah.
they look like human. They look human. So it's like
Overall, I think that movies that have humor, it's like any other element in story. You have to do it just right. If you have
yeah,
one character that's the jerk character and all he does is act like a jerk the whole movie, the audience is not as engaged because you're focusing on this jerk character who, and it's almost lazy writing. It's like have everything that motivates bad things come from this jerk character being a jerk character.
yeah,
Same thing with humor. If you kind of have it kind of pop in here and there and it's just like, oh yeah, remember me? Oh yeah, remember me? Oh, bam, you didn't see me there. Whoop, what's that? If you have it like that, I think
yeah.
that it works well. But
It can be a cop out. Yeah,
oh yeah, oh yeah, when it's a crutch, It's just like anything else. It kills it.
I wanted to make that clear when we did this episode that we wanted to give our thoughts on, do we agree, do we like it? Do we agree that it can be combined with horror, or should it stay away? You know, like, but I completely 100% on board with, yeah, put in some comedy in there.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. It's okay because not all life is morbid and, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's okay to have some kind of light at the end of the tunnel or here and there.
You're using one emotion and
Yeah.
only conveying one emotion. So it's very bland. It's like a dry piece of chicken with no salt. Again, the food analogy. It's just plain. It's boring. It's uninteresting.
Yeah.
You know, put some barbecue sauce on that piece of chicken, put a bun on it, turn it into a, you know, chicken sandwich. It's a little bit more lively. So I think that you can also kind of kill it by like, oh, I'm going to put too much of this and then I'm going to dress it up with all of this. Then it's no longer appealing.
And it is rare. But when you find that one, I hate using this word, but when you find that gem,
yeah,
with the perfect combination, you'll have an experience like no other when you're watching. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, I fully agree.
Movies like the full moon movies that we talked about before, or it's a horror movie, but it's more comedy horror. Like, it's more silly humor.
Yeah, especially certain entries are definitely made to be a little funnier, and I think those are. I don't know. Full Moon is different though. Full Moon is not a regular serving of food. It's not like going to a restaurant. It's like going to McDonald's. It's like, well, you run the risk of getting a stomach ache and maybe having the runs or something for a day. But you've had it multiple times, and you had it when you were a kid, and it always made you feel good. But there may be that time where that burger's gonna feel like a brick in your stomach for a while, and it's kind of the same thing. Apparently, we're food experts, and apparently
this guy,
I'm
telling you, I couldn't have said that. I couldn't have summed up Full Moon better than myself.
Full Moon is like McDonald's.
Full Moon is the fast food.
It won't always go down good, but when it does, it's pretty good. When it does, it makes you nostalgic, and you're just like, oh, I remember eating cheeseburgers as a kid in the playground. And but
this is the Happy Meal that I used to get.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that time I got the Happy Meal, and I got to keep the Batman cup, or if it's bad, it's just like, God, why did I do this to myself? McDonald's sucks. Worst food ever.
That was Ginger Dead Man.
yeah, exactly. I think ultimately that's what we boiled it down to. It's all comparison to food.
I just want to say thanks for joining us for episode 18. It was a fun episode.
A fun, funny episode. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you next time.
Later.